All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome. And we are excited to be here tonight. I'm excited to be here tonight with several amazing educators who have contributed to, actually, in some cases, a few of my books. But these educators have contributed to my most recent book called Things I Wish ... New. And so in this, oh, look at that. Yeah, mine's back over here. Thank you for holding that. I knew there was a reason I had you up here with me. So for anybody who is joining, whether you are on checking us out on YouTube, on LinkedIn, on Twitter, here on Facebook, in the communities, while we chat with each of these contributors and share some of their stories in the book, I'm sure they would love to know, like, what's something that you wish ... new? Like, how would you fill in that little space with a story? And what I love about this book is that it brings in 50, including myself, educators from around the world. And it's not specific to education, even though everybody that wrote in the book is an educator, but the lessons learned in this and shared, you could apply to anything. And so that's what we're here to talk about today. So I decided I didn't want to start and kick this off by myself because it's very lonely. It's just me. So I'm going to bring them up really quickly, one by one, to introduce them. And then we'll get to talking about things. So Dr. Desiree, would you let everybody know a little bit about you and, what you do?
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. I am Dr. Desiree Alexander. I am the founder, CEO of Educator Alexander Consulting, and I am the deputy director for an educational nonprofit in Louisiana. I was a teacher, school librarian, administrator, and now this is what I do, and I absolutely love it. And that's me.
And that's you. All right. Well, we are going to bring up next in line Andrew Easton. So welcome to Andrew, who, if anybody's out there watching, I had Andrew up here first with me, and then I kicked him out and brought Desiree up. So Andrew, have I given us an introduction of you and what you do?
Yeah, gosh, wear a lot of different hats. So during the day, I am the digital learning coordinator for the state of Nebraska with our ESU network. And so service agencies here, I get to work with all 17 of them. Was in the classroom as recently as 2 years ago. So still really passionate about that work, particularly in the area of personalized learning, and do some consulting and just dabble. I dabble a lot of stuff, and it's a lot of fun. So really passionate about education. Grateful for the opportunity to be on today.
Yeah, and I'm grateful that you join so often, and thankful for you and for everybody that's joining in today. So thank you. Next up, I'm going to bring up Dr. Maribeth Edmunds. Welcome. Love to hear about you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Rachelle. And hello, all. I'm Dr. Maribeth Edmunds, and I'm a former English teacher and central office director and former principal. And I've spent a lot of years in the classroom and in the school building. And I'm also kind of like a video series host. I host a series on Twitter called Edmunds Out, and I share some of my thoughts with the world. And I'm delighted to be here today to talk about the things I wish I knew, which even though I just wrote one thing, I probably could have filled the whole book with all the things I wish I knew, because every day I'd drive to work and I'd say, I wonder what's going to happen today. And I was never disappointed, because something very interesting always happened every day in a schoolhouse. So thank you for letting me be a part of tonight's soiree. Thank you.
Yeah. And before I bring up our next guest here, I do have to say, for anybody who has not seen your video series on Twitter, you do post them on Facebook too, I believe,
Yes.
because I've caught them on one or the other. Edmunds Out, you have to check it out. So if there's nothing else that you do, make sure that you follow everybody who is here today and check out those videos, because they are awesome. So thank you for being here. And next up, I'm going to add Pamela Hall to the stream, to our chat so far. So if you would introduce yourself and let us know a little bit about you as well.
Hey, everybody. So super thrilled to be a part of this movement about wishing the things we wish I knew, with all these amazing colleagues. So I'm Pamela Hall, wife, mom, and grandma, and an elementary engineering teacher. at Carrollton Elementary School in Isle of Wight County Schools, which is in Smithfield, Virginia. So those of you that love ham, I teach near, not so near, but kind of near the packing plant. So just if you eat Gwaltney ham or any kind of Smithfield ham, that's the district that I work in.
Oh my goodness.
And I also just released a book yesterday. Actually, EduMatch Publishing Company released the book yesterday. It's titled Be Their Warrior. So I'm also just super passionate about engaging with educators and helping them consciously connect with all learners and create a strong mindset and stay strong through my strong program. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And congratulations on the book launch. That's awesome. And thank you for the fun fact about the Smithfield ham, because I see that all the time. And every time I see it, I'm like, I know where that's from. I know somebody that lives near there. All right. And last but not least, another good friend of our show here, Dawn Harris. So welcome, Dawn. Let us know and let everybody know a little bit about you.
Hey, Rachelle. Hey, everybody. I'm so excited to be here. Thanks again, Rachelle, for having me. This is just such an exciting opportunity, especially to be part of your book and just share a little bit of my journey such that it will hopefully help somebody else and inspire somebody else to just find their way in this crazy and wild field of education that we all exist in. So I am a secondary educator of English language arts. By day, I teach 9th and 10th grade students all about literature and writing. I am a gifted and talented teacher. I serve about 50 students who are identified as gifted and talented. Let's see, I'm an associate professor of teacher education, focusing on measurement and assessment and communication arts for educators. I work with school districts on DEI team formation and community teams to support diversity, equity, inclusion across their communities, anti-racism education, curriculum design. I've had the opportunity to work with a wide variety of schools across the country, supporting them in that work. And I'm also author of Plan Like a Pirate, a really exciting book that talks all about that journey to being the best teacher that you can possibly be for your kids in the classroom. It involves a lot about, yes, curriculum design and the framework for learning that I use in my classroom, but also about how we focus on ourselves as educators so that we can be the best version of ourselves every single day. And then what we do with that, what we're doing right now is taking all that knowledge, that expertise, that experience, and bringing it to other teachers so that they can learn and grow from the experiences that we have. You know, that's what we do, and why, you know, Rachelle and I were talking the last time we were together about how we come together. It's so important that we come together and share our experiences. And that's what I love most about your book, Rachelle, is that it just brings so many amazing voices together to just help us all be better.
Well, thank you. And it's congratulations on like several of us with new books in like the recent, well, I don't want to give months or anything or weeks because like this whole past couple of years, I'm way off when it comes to that. Not as recently as Pam's book, but still a couple of new books out there. So welcome to you and to everybody else. And for anybody who is like, what are we tuning into today? We're talking about, and Desiree had hers, I'll grab mine, I'll hold it up. It's, oh, look at that. It's the newest book called Things I Wish ... New. And I don't want to spend too much time talking because I want everybody to hear from all of you. But people say like, what made you write this book? And for anybody, you know, what makes you write the book? And what I found is in the books that I've written, often it has come up just because I'm thinking about things I've done in my classroom, or I'm reflecting on, you know, the way that I was when I started teaching, or how I've changed since I've started teaching, you know, the differences that being connected, a lot of different things have made in my life. And then my own experiences as a student years ago, and then in different, you know, law school, graduate school, and how that changed me. And so a couple of years ago, I started to make on a notebook paper stories about things that happened in my classroom, lessons that I learned. And then I started to notice that when I would talk with people, they would say, well, are you doing this? And I would say, well, no, but I wish I knew that whenever I started teaching. Or how about this? And no, but I wish I knew what project-based learning was, or I wish I knew it was okay. And I just found that there were all of these things that I wish I knew. And so I put out a post in different spaces. I connected directly with some people, some of those that might be here tonight as well, and said, hey, I'm writing this book about things I wish ... knew. And it was just a starter. And it could have been anybody, things I wish I knew, teachers knew, students knew. I did ask some students if they were interested in writing like things that I wish teachers knew. So that may be another book at another time. But what it ended up being is a lot of work to pull all the stories together. But I didn't realize how many people were involved. And in the end of everything, when it was put together, there are 50 educators, including myself, from around the world, different experiences, different, we have a first-year teacher, Sydney from Nashville, who graduated first-year teaching in a pandemic year, getting her master's degree and all of these things, to people who are already retired educators and just everywhere in between. So putting it together has been amazing. And I love the cover of it. I just have to say that the way that it looks, I don't know. So I'm hoping that people will pick it up and just be inspired by the different stories and also start to tell theirs, which brings me to my question. And this is where I am going to, as Mel says, put on my listening lips and listen to some of you. But I will start it by saying that I kept everything to myself for years. I was afraid to admit if I didn't understand something, if I was having problems in my classroom, to make connections, because I didn't want people to know that I was struggling. And there's so much vulnerability whenever you put that story out there. And even with this book, for anybody that reads it, I've had some people send me messages directly in the past couple of weeks after they've read my beginning part of my story. And I shared something very, very personal that I'd never shared before. And so it's important for people to understand, people have different experiences or different advice, and we go through different things. And that's kind of what pushed me to pull all of this together. And so I think it's so important now, things I wish I knew way back then about telling stories, but pulling all of these stories together and reading your stories, which I've read so many times between the edit process and then reading it again and hearing you speak about it. So for other people to know and to be able to relate to that and to find the strength to get through something that's challenging, or the courage to try something they've been afraid to do, or to step out of that isolation. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So importance of telling stories. I'm not going to pull you up in any particular order, but if anybody wants to share, what's your story about, or why do you think it's important? However you want to take this. I don't have a wheel of names to spin, so I'll leave it up to any of you who wants to go first.
All right. Well, I'll break the ice. How's that?
That sounds good.
So the story that I submitted for the book is about 9/11. And I don't know how many of you recall what you were doing in a school the day you heard about 9/11, but I think most of us probably do. And so what had happened to me was that I had taken a role in central office in August, and it was my first time stepping out of the classroom, and my role was basically to work with the superintendent, the assistant superintendent, on all of their work in a large district. And part of it was public information officer. And lo and behold, 4 or 5 weeks into this job, 9/11 happens. And I'm completely unprepared for this, completely unprepared. But I think everybody, it was in some version unprepared for what happened that day. And a great deal of our families, and not only our families, but husbands and wives and nephews and fiancés worked in the towers. So we were hit really hard with trying to scramble in terms of learning what it was that was happening, because 9 o'clock, school is starting, right? We're getting underway, and here the outside world is finding out about the planes hitting the towers, and we're just trying to process this and figure out, how do you get thousands of kids home whose parents may not be coming home? And so it was, and as the public information officer, I'm the one that's writing everything down and sending out all the messages. So it was something I was completely unprepared for. So what do I wish I knew? I wish I knew how to handle that pretty single-handedly. I mean, in those days, we didn't text message. We still had clamshell phones. Remember those? And so you're trying to, reach out to people and reach out to 10 different schools and get buses going. And not only did we do that, but we set up 2 centers in town for people who couldn't, kids we couldn't get home, getting food in. I mean, it was like a catastrophe center. But I think as I reflect on it, and I appreciate the opportunity to reflect on it, you just don't know what you're going to be called upon to do for the safety of all of those around you in school, whether it's the teachers, it's the students, it's the family, your whole community could be affected in an instant. Our lives changed dramatically. And I just want to just make one other comment, and then I'll give the floor to someone else. Our superintendent, by 2:00 in the afternoon, had the foresight to call all the faith leaders in town to the school to meet, to talk about how we were going to take care of our teachers, our families, because we have a large mosque in our town. We have a lot of Muslims, we have Indians, we have, all different faiths. And so as I stepped back from that, I thought that was probably the most brilliant part of the day, to bring the faith leaders in to help start the conversation and the healing. And so I learned a lot that day. And I think all of us might think about the courage we need when called upon for our children and our families. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And you're right. Like that day, it's hard to believe how much time has passed since that day. I mean, I remember it as though it happened a week ago. Just the students coming in, just experiencing that and seeing it happen and watching it on TV. And I have some students who reach out every year that just say, I'm thankful, which it almost brings tears to my eyes. And sometimes it has. And they'll just say that I'm thankful that I was with you at that time. It was so scary. Like, how did you hold it together? And I'm thinking, like, I didn't feel like I was holding it together, because how do you, and something like that you can't prepare for. But you sharing your story in this book is powerful, because anything that we encounter, I mean, you can't be prepared for everything. There's just no way. Mm-hmm. But the more that you share your stories and the more that you relate, and you are vulnerable in that, it gives inspiration and hope to other people who may be in a situation where they're feeling like many of us did on that day, and know that, what, we'll get through this, and we'll get through this together. And it may not be easy, but we can do it. And so thank you for sharing that story. And I have heard, like, just reading it, and people that have read it, just they cite your story and just say, wow, how powerful that was. So I appreciate you putting that in there and sharing that with everybody around the world who is reading the book. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
All right. So thank you for LinkedIn user as well, with people joining in from all over the place. Who would like to share next?
I'll go.
All right.
So I wrote a chapter about what I wished I knew coming out of college, because I did not realize the overwhelming heartache and heart work that's involved in education. And college does not prepare any of us for that. And because I'm 33 years in education, definitely way back when, there wasn't any talk of SEL or courses like that. So my chapter was all about the heartache of getting a class of 6th graders that couldn't read. And I wasn't equipped to teach 1st grade reading. And I had to enlist the reading specialist, and she taught me how to teach reading. And actually I went on to teach 1st grade, because I wanted to stop it so they didn't get to 6th grade and were not able to read. But in that first year of teaching, I ended up in court 2 times. First time, was a student came to me and shared abuse. And I went to court and fought for that student. And I learned justice isn't always justice. And that was heartbreaking, totally heartbreaking. And I write about that in a story format. And then the other story is a student said a racial slur to another student, and the fam went home and told their family that I did it. And I ended up in court again, fearful. I hadn't even begun my calling. And I'm like, calling? Is this really my calling? Because I hadn't even finished 1 year of being a teacher and all these things. And later I've learned it's called compassion fatigue. I hurt so much for all my students and their situations. So I write about some ways actually to remedy that, so that those that are just beginning, or if you're not beginning and you're going through those situations of just heartache and heartbreak and all the heart work that we do in education, there are some things that I now know that you can do. And so, yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing your stories too. And that would be very tough. I mean, the first year is, you don't know, like college just doesn't prepare you for what you're going to walk in on that first day, or the first day of your second or third, or any year for that matter. And I think that's another thing that is key about this book, is that it does give so many perspectives of, like, I've been in teaching for 10 years and it doesn't get any easier. I've been in there for 20 years. And like, these are the challenges you're going to face because the kids change, things change. And so that's another thing that, like I said, I really appreciate about this book, is that it shows that, like, you just have to keep on going and stay connected. And there's so many lessons in it. And anyway, so thank you for sharing your story. All right. So who's it going to be? Dawn, Desiree, or Andrew?
If you don't mind me jumping in next here, because I'm a little bit short. I'm headed to my son's practice here before too long. Right. But I will say to zag probably a little bit from telling. If you'd like to read what I wrote, you can check out the book. But I would say, like, to kind of build off of just this theme of the importance of stories from experiences today, in the role that I'm in here in Nebraska. I get the opportunity to share our stories through a lot of different formats, and I'm responsible for kind of being an advocate for a lot of different people, or to give space for them to advocate is probably the better way to even say it, just like Rachelle's doing here with this, whether it's a book or however we go about that. And I'm so passionate about that. And I didn't realize it as much as a classroom teacher, just how necessary that is. And so even in my day-to-day, I got my car to drive to work today and turn on the radio. And on the radio, the question for this morning was, tell us about your school days scandal, the worst thing that you heard happened in your school district when you were going through. And it was awful. It was just, it's the lowlights, right? It is just the worst stories that might come out of our profession. And what breaks my heart is that if you were to ask something positive from educators, they could probably give you 15 or 20 things that would bring a tear to your eye and inspire you and make you realize why we show up for this each and every day. And between that, and then I also spent some time listening to some of our legislative session today, and just if we don't tell our story, and this is cliche to say almost, but like someone else is going to, and so we have to be able to give voice to that and step up and step into those opportunities when we get the chance, in this and in all formats. And so, gosh, is it so important. And thanks to Rachelle and to the great educators on this call here today for doing that, for answering that call, and for being those change makers, because it matters as much now as ever. And I'm just really grateful for people that are willing to do that.
Yeah. And thank you for sharing your story and just the experience. And like you said about what you heard on the radio, just, I'd like things like that too, to make you think. And it's like, what was that thing? And how did it impact me? Or how did I respond? Whatever comes to your mind, which again, that's where some of these stories have come from too. So thank you to Andrew. And next up, we have Dr. Desiree.
Hello. first of all, I mean, I just love the book. I think we were all writing in, pre-pandemic. So it's amazing to see how all of the stories still are even more prevalent, I feel like now than they may have been. But my story on page 163 is that day it's okay to take a break and breathe. And it's one of those stories that I tell when I'm teaching my classroom management class. And it's that I wish that I knew that each and every teacher has that one day. They have that one day where, and I remember my big day where I think my students went to lunch, and I taught 6th grade at that time. And I just packed my little bag, and I put my bag on my desk, and I just kind of looked at it, and I just was thinking, I will mail them their keys. They can mail me my check, and we're done. We're done with each other. Relationship is done. And I was strongly, I was just about to walk out the door. I wasn't going to tell anybody anything. I just was done. But I think the problem is we don't talk about that day. And we feel very isolated when we have that day. And we feel like it's just us. It's just because I'm a bad teacher. It's just because I can't connect. Everyone else is awesome. Everyone else, no one else goes through these days. And it's just not true. So that's the one thing that I wish I knew, that every teacher has that day or has more than one of those days. And it's normal. It's normal in any job, but especially when you're product or human beings, it is normal to have that day. And just to understand that, don't leave the whole profession, leave your situation. So just if it's something where you're miserable every day, then that situation is not for you. It doesn't mean teaching is not for you, but it means that situation is not for you. Either that grade level is not for you, that content is not for you, that school district is not for you. Just something is wrong. It doesn't mean that that's not your profession or your calling. So that is what my Things I Wish I Knew story is about.
Yeah, and I love it. And when I read it, I was like, you submitted it right away. I was like, you could have X amount of time. And I'm like, oh my gosh, she just gave this to me already. But you're right. And right before we go to Dawn, I will say that one of the benefits of working on this book through this time that we've been experiencing for almost 2 years now is that a lot of the stories we're able to pull in, especially at the end, things I wish I knew before a pandemic. And just the importance of communication with families and being connected. So thank you for that reminder about taking that day. And back to you, Dawn, to wrap us up here for today's episode of Things I Wish ... knew.
Thank you so much. I love all of these stories that everyone has shared tonight. I mean, it's so exciting to be part of this piece of brilliance that so many educators and beyond are going to benefit from. And for me, I think it really connects that idea of connection, Desiree was talking about and others were talking about, is really what I focused on in my piece for the book. And it's about finding your people, and through those people finding your purpose. And my story talks about a situation that, teaching is my second career. I spent many years in the private sector before I became a teacher. And the story that I share in the book is about, going into education. I knew right away, just as I had with my previous career, I wanted to be the best that I could be. What was it that I needed to do to excel in my job, to be able to, just advance in a way that I could show my students that I was working hard every day to grow and just to be better. And so with that, I remember having a conversation with one of my professors in the teaching program that I was in. I had really admired her journey, like where she was, what she was involved in, and the organizations that she supported outside of education and outside of her role in the university. And I specifically asked her, how did you get to this point in your career, like where you are and what you're doing now? What was that like for you? And she looked at me literally and said, oh, you'll figure out what you're gonna do someday, or you'll figure out where you're supposed to be. And I was really perplexed, like, why would you say that? Like, give me something, right? Give me something. And but she didn't. And in a way, I mean, I wish she had, but in a way, I'm glad she didn't, because I discovered on my own, through my own journey, that it was the people that I surrounded myself with who were there for me to lift me up and to show me the way, to show me where I needed to go as an educator to best be able to support my students in the classroom and to grow myself as an educator. You know, it's all about who's in our circle. Who are the people that we spend our time with? They can either sink us or, you know, lift us sky high. And I just made it a goal throughout my entire career, even before education, and certainly now while I'm in education, is to find those people that help to bring out the best in me so I can be the best for my students. And that's what my story is about in the book. And I love sharing it in hopes that new teachers or veteran teachers who haven't found their people yet will understand that it's really important to put yourself in the right group of people so that everyone, the students you serve, you, your school, can all be successful through the connections that you make with others.
And Dawn, without even knowing, you perfectly wrapped it up, because the way that I started the book and with the first line is, if there was one word that I could just say, like, that I wish I knew, it was the word connect. And so, yes, we definitely need to connect, and thank everybody for sharing today. And we're all connected, and we all connected in different forms, you know, conferences and Twitter chats and webinars and you name it, book studies. And I'm so thankful for all of you, and for Andrew, who he left on his own. I didn't kick him out this time. But for anybody who's watching, you know, if you would like to get a copy of the book, it's Things I Wish EDU. It's on Amazon. Bulk orders if you want to do a book study. I'm sure that any one of us would love to join you and talk about our stories with you, with a group of teachers. So don't hesitate to reach out. And as always, thank you all for joining in. And Mel from Colombia for joining us. And you're right, power of connections, and we are better together. So thank you to everybody here. And for those of you watching now and on the recording, and later on the audio in the podcast, and we will catch you next time with another group of contributors. Have a great rest of your Monday, everybody. Thanks, Dee. Thanks for joining in. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye, everybody.